The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
All the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to Jesus. The Pharisees and scribes were grumbling, saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So he told them a parable. There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me." So the father divided his property between the 2 sons. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country. There, he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him to the fields to feed the pigs. The young man would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare, but here I am dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me now like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, and get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and found.' They began to celebrate. Now, his elder son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. The slave replied, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf because he has got him back safe and sound.' Then the elder son became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, 'Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you. I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours comes back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him.' Then the father said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice, because your brother was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found.'" The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. We hope that you will feel good when you go home today after this Mass in connection with what the one child said this morning. In other words, he didn't feel good when he came back. Pope Francis tells us that God never tires of forgiving. That's certainly brought out by Jesus. He reached out to all sinners, forgave them. In fact, as the gospel brings out to us today, what he did is he even ate with sinners. That's what upset the scribes and Pharisees. Eating with sinners, terrible. So, what does he do? He has recourse to a beautiful story that we just heard. What's important for us as we hear that story, that beautiful story, is to ask ourselves in all sincerity, whom do we identify with? Is it with the elder son, who becomes very upset, angry, resentful, because there is a lot of anger and resentment in our society today, especially with regard to the government, probably with regard to the Catholic Church too, especially in relationship to sexual abuse. All that anger is there. All you have to do sometimes with individuals is just press the right button, doop, and individuals explode almost like a Mount St. Helens. We see it with regard to employees, employers. We see it in family life, sometimes with spouses, where they say things that they regret later on. And here with the elder son, what do we notice? He becomes very upset. He starts pouting, like we sometimes do when things don't go our way. You saw an injustice there. And there are a lot of injustices in our society today. I'm sure we can't enumerate them. So, do we identify with him? Or do I identify with the prodigal son? The individual who is given so much by the Father, and yet, what does he do? He goes to another country and just uses up all that he was given. Billy Graham once said that there are, or were, 1,000 teenagers and young adults that would go to New York City every month for fame and fortune, only to find out that many of them ended up on the street or were invited in by the Covenant House. Here are individuals who can easily become addicted to violence, become addicted to drugs, alcohol, you name it. Recently, as we know, there was a 14-year-old who shot 2 students in Ohio. We have an example of this one girl who shot the other girl, and that girl in turn committed suicide. Thus, you see, there is a lot of that going on, and that's why I think it's very challenging for parents today to raise teenagers, to raise a family where there is real harmony there rather than a lot of disputes and people getting very easily upset. And there's a lot of peer pressure with regard to teenagers today too. Reminds me so much of this 104-year-old lady who was asked by an interviewer, said, well, what do you find so helpful or so wonderful about being 104 years old? And she said, there is no peer pressure. Or do I identify with the prodigal father? It really should be the prodigal father, because it's the father that's always waiting for the son to return. In fact, he sees him at a distance, and what does he do? He goes out after him. He embraces him. He kisses him. He kills a fatted calf, and everybody celebrates except the elder son. Could not do it. There was someone who once asked another individual, well, of all these individual characters, who was the most stressed of all? And the individual said, well, they were all stressed, but who was the most stressed? And the individual finally said, well, I think the most stressed was the fatted calf. But here's a powerful example, I think, of what Francis is talking about insofar as, especially during this powerful season of Lent, that we reach out and are willing to forgive others. Very important for us to do that. Anglican Bishop Tutti, who is from South Africa, admitted the fact that he was willing to forgive his father for abusing him. We see it in South Carolina, where these African Americans immediately forgave those people that killed one another. And in that way, I believe, they prevented a riot right there. We see it so often with regard to the Amish, with regard to so many individuals who are willing to forgive. And of course, the most powerful example is Jesus. On the cross, what did he say? Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing. All the passion and the agony that he was going through, and yet that he could say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing. We recite this beautiful prayer that Jesus taught us, the Our Father. But sometimes, even when we say, forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us, is it just words, or do we really mean it? One big difference there, to really mean that, and to make this season of Lent then a joyful type of season too. And individuals, I've seen that happen in their lives. Once they get to this particular point in their life where they're willing to forgive someone that has hurt them, the joy that's there, because that weight is lifted from them. And so today, as we say in this celebration, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Can we say that with real conviction and then carry it out? Can we do that?
Yes.
We'll try it again. Can we do that?